Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's Coach Matt, EliteThrowsCoaching.com, and today I'm coming to you to answer a question from a coach named Tim who sent me an email about a week ago, and he's got questions. He's having kind of a big problem with his team right now. I'm just going to read you to a little bit of his email that he sent to me. Basically, he says that he needs some advice on something that his high school boys are doing. I like how specifically he said boys, because this is kind of a boy problem. Says none of his guys are very experienced in throwing. They've been working the basics. They're doing pretty good. Common problem is that all of them try to arm it as hard as they can and will not use any separation. We have done a lot of resistance work in the weight room to simulate separation. They've thrown tires to get them to use their body, but to no avail. They still armed the disc and shot both. I have a kid that looks like the Hulk, strong as can be, but can only throw 38 feet because he arms it. Any suggestions would be great. Okay, so this is a very common problem, especially with boys, and probably can understand why. They like to show off. They like to try to one-up each other. This can be a problem. So we're going to try to answer this for Tim right now. But before we do, please make sure to subscribe to the channel. Just click that subscribe button right down below and click that notification bell as well. That way we get more people to subscribe. YouTube populates this to more people that like track and field and throwing. More coaches, more throwers get help, and it just helps the entire throwing community out there. All right, so I wrote a list for Tim of just some things that he can take with him to hopefully help out the situation that he's dealing with his boys, with his team. So this first tip you probably won't be able to utilize this year, but it's something definitely for your next season that you want to try to utilize. And I want you to really watch the language that you're using at practice. When you say things like, and this is one of my big pet peeves, but in discus, when you say things like spin, if your kids come out for outdoor, you've got a bunch of freshmen and sophomores that don't have any experience throwing, kind of like you're dealing with right now, and you talk about, oh, next week we're going to learn how to spin. We're going to teach you how to spin. We're going to do some more spinning drills. We're going to do this, spin, 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 spin. They're not thinking about driving or rotating or separation or anything like that. They're thinking about jump in the air, twirl around like you're doing ballet, like it's Swan Lake, twirl around in the air and throw. So spinning gives this idea that it's not really a driving motion. It's a jump and twirl motion. So I don't like to use the word spin. The other word I don't like to use is throw. Okay, because throwing, especially to a 14-year-old, 15-year-old kid that's maybe played baseball or football, throwing means arm. So when you say things like, all right, guys, let's go learn to throw. Let's go do some throws. Let's go throw. Let's go over here. Get ready to throw. Let's warm up, and then we're going to throw. All they're thinking is arm, 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 arm. So I will try to not use the word throw whenever I practice. It's, all right, guys, let's go do some shot. All right, guys, let's go glide. Let's work on rotation. Okay, let's warm up. Then we'll head to the circle, do some practice, do some flicks, do some releases. I'll never say throw, because the word throw always means arm. So for that reason, maybe next season, you can start it this season just to build the habit, but maybe next season, don't say the word throw anymore. So the next thing that you can do is you can actually just take the shot put and take the discus out of their hand. This is something that I do at all of my track camps, especially my overnight camp, because you've got a bunch of strangers who are working together. You've got a bunch of kids who just met each other, and everyone wants to kind of assert dominance. Everyone wants to see who can throw the farthest. So the first thing I do is I take the shot put out of their hands, and I start working on positioning their feet, positioning their legs, their lower body, and all that good stuff. That way they're not thinking about throwing. They're not thinking about distance. They're thinking more about technique. What I will do is I'll put the shot in their hand. I'll teach them how to put their fingers behind the ball. I'll flick into the ground, which we showed you those warm-ups a few weeks ago. Flick into the ground, flick by pushing the shot. We'll get their feet set up correctly. We'll do some more pushes, some more flicks, but there's no pulling in the arm. There's no using the legs or using the hips or throwing the head and trying to really launch this thing really, really far. It's just pushes and releases. That seems to get throwing out of their head. And then we move on to drills, and then we move on to teaching them power position and all that stuff. So maybe it's something where the first couple of days of practice, you had your athletes throwing every single day. They're thinking, hey, who can throw it the farthest? And then it starts this bad habit. Really focus on technique early on in the season. Take the shot out of their hand, and it should help them out quite a bit. Okay, the next thing that you can do is you can use something in their hand other than the competition size shot put, because really it's the competition size shot put that they're trying to throw as far as possible and they're trying to beat each other with. They're going to do that in a meet anyway. So let's put something in their hand where they're not really going to care how far it goes. So what I did was I wrote a list. You can get some different implements in their hand. My favorite one that I've started using is sort of a rolled up towel, a rolled up hand towel with some white athletic tape wrapped around it. You can have them hold that up against their neck as they're doing drills. It's also good to do that indoors. You can push it up against a wall when you're doing your drills. It's not going to damage the wall, but it ends up being about the size of a shot put. So you can do that when it's rainy. You can do that when the weather's gross. Have them do all their footwork and technique and actually release the balled up towel right into the wall. Obviously, you're throwing it into the wall, so who cares? It's not going to go far. It's going to hit the wall, so they're not going to be thinking about distance. The other thing you can use, like in discus, you can use bowling pins. Now, bowling pins, they might try to see who can throw the bowling pin the farthest, but you just have to make sure that they realize that it's not a discus. It's not going to fly like a discus. Who cares how far it goes? And we're not there to see who can throw a bowling pin the farthest. You can even make something up and say, hey, it's longer than a discus. It's bigger than a discus. It's maybe heavier or more leverage than a discus. So if you try to throw it hard, you're going to get hurt. You can kind of lie to them a little bit and say, look, if we really try to wing this thing out there, you're going to get hurt because the weight is beyond your hand. The ball of that bowling pin, the base of the bowling pin, is too far beyond your hand. You're going to get hurt. So maybe kind of tell a little white lie a little bit. It's not really lying. They could get hurt doing it. But if you kind of scare them a little bit, maybe they won't. Overweight shot puts, probably my favorite. If you give them a 14-pound shot, or if you give them like a like a 6K shot, which is 13.2, they're going to know it's heavier. They're going to feel the weight in their hand, and they're not going to care how far it goes because it's heavier than what they would normally use. So there's a lot of different examples out there. Javelin throwers do this all the time. They have javelin throwing balls, and they've got all these different implements that they can use to kind of simulate a javelin, but it doesn't kind of do the damage, I guess you can say, that throwing a regular javelin every single day will do. And it gets the idea of distance out of their head. That's the thing too, is get the distance out of their head. If you're talking about it at practice, don't talk about it at practice, but change the implement for a while, and then they're not going to care how far it goes. Okay, my third and final tip is to remove all competition from practice. Now, I know right now they are kind of competing against each other to see who can throw the farthest, but you as a coach need to make sure that you remove all competition from their practice. So if you are doing any measuring at practice, just at a regular day of practice, don't do that anymore. If you've spray painted lines to know how far the shots are going or the discuses are going, try to get rid of those lines, okay? What they're doing is they're trying to one-up each other. And if you take away the ability for them to measure, then you're not going to know. I mean, obviously, if there's the one alpha kid who can throw the thing 50 feet and he's just sort of like throwing it out there, everyone's going to know, well, we're not going to beat that kid. Okay, but if you got 3 or 4, maybe 5 inexperienced throwers, and they're all kind of in the same department, they're all kind of in the same distance range, don't give them any additional help in measuring. So don't take out a measuring tape at practice. Don't let them walk it off with their feet. I know that's what kids do, especially boys do a lot. Don't let them put sticks in the ground to say, well, this is my best, and see if you can throw farther than that stick. And definitely don't use any type of marking paint to create like the lines of, the arcs in the sector of 20, 25, 30, 35, 40, 45, and so on. Don't give them any excuse to measure. Take away all opportunity for them to measure, and this problem should hopefully start going away. All right, that does it from here. We're going to do one more video this week. We got a bunch of video analysis coming up, but we've got one more video this week on Discus that we're going to be covering. More about how to hold it, how to release it, all that good stuff, okay? So if you have any questions, make sure to email me, matt@primalatc.com. And if you have any questions on this specific video, any comments, if you have ideas and want to help out Coach Tim, write those in the comment section down below. Don't forget to give the video a like and make sure to subscribe to the channel. We're going to put a bunch of stuff up here on the screen. You can subscribe, you can check out our overnight camp, and you can check out our previous playlist, so I should say the current playlist that we're doing on Discus. We've got 2 videos out of the 10 done, and number 3 comes out on Tuesday. So make sure you guys check that out. Make sure you subscribe, click all this stuff that just popped up, and you will be hearing from me very, very soon.